our strategy over the next 18 months to 2 years is very much focused on customer data. One of the key aspects of our service is that we enable a service provider to bring to market a whole range of cloud services whilst maintaining 100% data residency and data sovereignty in their local jurisdiction. So that's a unique value proposition that we can bring to the service provider. So looking at that, and looking at how customers are engaging with cloud services, what we realized was that service providers need to take a data-centric approach to the way they're building out their cloud services. So with that in mind, we're very much focused on increasing the options and the value proposition around customer data. So the idea is that our service provider partners can essentially offer the best place for customer data going forward. So customers who put their data with the service provider partner rather than on-premise or say with a hyperscaler, they can maintain the sovereignty that they want and the compliance and the control over their data, but at the same time, it's in the most fertile environment so that they can basically get the best value out of that data. So how that translates into new products and features for CloudSigma, we've been expanding the storage options that we offer so that we can then build on top of that much more sophisticated services that blend different ways of storing data and analyzing data to be able to provide a higher value. So the best example of this is the new data fabric that we're offering. This actually plugs into the different storage types that we have in the cloud and allows a customer automatically to get analytics and a lot of value add from the data that they store in that fabric. And actually it's sort of akin to something like Snowflake or even Cloudera, something like this, but actually it's much simpler to use. Obviously you don't have to set it up because it's a cloud service and you get all that value for a much lower price. So we've had really excellent feedback from the early adopters that we've had look at the product. Another idea is, again, around optimization and leveraging this sovereignty is the S3 caching service that we built. So what we noticed was that for various reasons, customers have put data into big sort of hyperscaler object storage environments because it's cost effective, etc. At least they think so. And then what they find when they deploy is the charges start racking up for API calls, for data transfer in particular, etc. So if you have any data in S3 or an S3 equivalent in hyperscaler, if you have any touches on that data, except for it being very archival, you will have a larger data transfer and API bill than you will have for storage. So actually the storage price is almost incidental compared to your other bills. So what we did is we realized that we wanted to make something as easy to deploy and essentially a no-brainer for customers. So we built a service that allows you to link your existing bucket, so you don't have to change any workflows. And what it does is it syncs your chosen buckets to the local service provider partner of CloudSigma, which could also be a performance benefit for the customer because we're in country in many locations. And that service charges nothing for storage. And then the data transfer cost per gigabyte is significantly reduced compared to the kind of let's say existing or legacy deployment that you have. So the effect of that is that you have no increase in storage cost. You have increased performance potentially by choosing a node closer to the end users that you have. And then thirdly, you significantly reduce your data transfer bill. So that's why we call it a no-brainer, because it's a no-brainer. So it's not, and you don't have to change anything about the way you do your work. The only thing you need to do is use the new URLs from CloudSigma. So that's, or from the partner, should I say. So that's kind of another service where we saw an ability for us to leverage our network and our cloud locations to be able to reduce and get better value for the customers. Service providers today are in quite a challenging position. The market has become very competitive in many areas. A lot of the service providers have local hyperscaler competition. Some don't, but they're still in the market in the region. And they have brought out more and more services. In many cases, they're quite price competitive, not always in reality, but the perception is this with customers. And at the same time, that customer expectation, that's driven an increase in customer expectation. So they're sort of chasing a train that's leaving the station. That's kind of the analogy I would give. So even as they improve or increase things, they don't feel that they're getting ahead. In fact, they're falling behind in many cases. So when they look at what are the operational results and the financial results of the clouds that they're often managing themselves, they're not happy with those results. So those are service providers that are running clouds themselves. So that could be a VMware environment, or it could be OpenStack, or whatever. There are pluses and minuses to all the different approaches. But the reality is that it has a lot of operational complexity and risk. And in many cases, they're not set up to do that financially in an optimized way, usually because they're only running 1 or 2 locations. So everything running 24/7, that drives a lot of cost. And so to run something 24/7, you need at least 8 people minimum in a normal working environment. So you can imagine then multiple teams, etc. So maybe you've got 20 full-time employees if you're really doing it properly for a cloud. So if you derive all that cost down to a few locations, that doesn't work. So what CloudSigma does is provide a fully managed service, and we're able to unify our costs just like the hyperscalers do, but we do it with different service providers across a network instead of our own locations. So we can come into a service provider and say, look, let us do the plumbing and all the basics and allow you to move up the value chain into solutioning and kind of driving value from the customer relationship, which we can never replace. So we're not competing with the service provider, we're complementing them. And we're saying, look, even if you have your own operations team and you have people doing that, instead of them monitoring storage and network and doing security updates and other things, they can instead be, how can we best serve a customer, get a better solution for them, manage services, etc. You turn them from a cost center into a revenue and profit center. So we can help the service provider go through that transformation. And then the final thing to say is, I say it as an aside because I don't think it's really a great strategy. You have some service providers that have started reselling hyperscalers, and that's fine. They may need to do that because there are customers that insist on a specific vendor. However, the financial benefit from that is usually in single digits of revenue share, it's tiny. So strategically, you're putting your customers at risk often in putting them in those clouds, and at the same time, the financial return is negligible. So you may need that as a complement, but in terms of building a sustainable business, what we're offering is a transformation to the traditional approach that allows them to dramatically change the financial result. Our partners usually have like a gross margin, profit margin from the business with us of at least 30, even up to 40, 50% gross margin. So that's a 10x, 20x what they might get if they were reselling in Amazon or Azure. So the new S3 caching service, in summary, allows an end user to essentially proxy the requests against the files that they have in an object storage environment via one of our service provider partners. The benefit of that is that the service itself is built so that we don't charge for storage. The partner doesn't charge for storage, they only charge for data transfer, and they do so at a much lower rate per gigabyte. And it's like a reactive cache, so it only actually copies files that get requested. So you don't have to worry about filtering. You can just give it a massive bucket. You don't get charged anything extra, and it's only going to move the files and copy them. It won't move them, but it'll create a copy of them locally in the service provider if that file is requested. So you could have a very large deployment of a petabyte, but only touching 10 terabytes of files, that's fine. It will just only touch those files in terms of copying, and you're not charged any extra. So the benefit from the end user is they basically don't have any increase in cost. They can only save money on API calls because there's no API call cost, and also data transfer. The benefit to the service provider is that it's extremely, it's actually, even with the much lower data transfer cost, it's a very profitable business, and it's very revenue intensive. So you can have like one box. We've built this out on a ARM-based platform that's very cost effective. And one box can drive a lot of revenue. Like, to give you an example, if it's really full, that box can drive 3 to 4 times the cost of the box every month. Now, there are other costs like connectivity, so it's not exactly like you're getting a 500% return a month, but you are getting a highly revenue-intensive service. The other thing is it's a door opener with end users that may already be engaged with a hyperscaler. So you have an Azure or a Amazon, and what can you go in to offer them? You can say, I can save you money. I can save you money, and you don't have to change anything about your workflows internally. You just need to basically front end the distribution of the files, which is a pretty easy change for an end user to make. And I can just save you money. So that gets an initial engagement with a customer. And then, of course, the question is, once you've delivered that, what next? What else can I save you money for? So that's the idea. So it's something that's it's a gateway drug to your cloud. So the idea is that you can offer that as a very easy win and then go from there in terms of maybe stuff that may be more complex to get them engaged with. Firstly, this is a trend that will continue and get stronger. So it's important. It's not going away. It's quite the opposite. So service providers need to align with the strategy that's going to support customers and their requests to do that. They can't sort of hand wave it away, put it that way. So it's something that they need to take seriously. In terms of why would CloudSigma be the right partner to help them execute on the strategy, from the very beginning, we've built all our services through partners. So the partner is our in-country execution partner. So all of the computing, all of the physical equipment, all the service delivery happens locally, and every cloud is atomic. So it means it's standalone. There are no outside dependencies. So in principle, if the internet was turned off and you could only access things from within a country, I'm not expecting this, but let's say that happened, there would be no service disruption to CloudSigma clouds, powered clouds, for example. And that can't be said, by the way, about other services like on-premise in terms of the sort of hyperscaler sort of on-premise models. They're essentially marionettes from central command, which then you have to ask, what do they see in the clouds that they're marionetting? So in terms of that, that's not the way we work. Everything is in country, on the ground. So you have 100% data residency and data sovereignty. No data is leaving that data center unless the customer electively backs it up somewhere else or whatever. And so you can sort of have that assurance and the clarity with the customer. I have a vision for CloudSigma to be a global player with a network of locations in 80 to 100 countries worldwide. What I see is that outside of these big hub locations, many countries are poorly served locally for cloud services. And at the same time, I see an increasing number of solution providers like independent software vendors and people like this that want to be able to provide an in-country service delivery. But there isn't a vendor that offers that. So if I was an independent software vendor and I wanted to offer a service and give you local data sovereignty, well, by definition, if I'm operating in a lot of countries, I need a cloud vendor that can offer me a local infrastructure solution across those countries. So that's where I see CloudSigma going. So we are enabling service providers today, and that's very important, but we're giving them access to a global network as well. So as we build that global network, that will become an increasingly important part of our value proposition as well, the network effect, essentially. So both for the local partner, who can offer a global deployment option to all their customers, and also for other customers that are just looking for a network solution where they can have a global infrastructure delivery solution that doesn't exist today. We think that data and a data-driven strategy is the right strategy for a service provider to have. So. And then part of that is a data sovereignty and compliance and residency pitch, and being able to support them in maintaining that, because customers have a lot of concerns about where their data is, how it's being used, especially now with AI, like who's using it for God knows what, right? And you can have a look at the business models of some of these AI companies, and if you don't think they're using their data, you should ask them for the enterprise version of their product. And then they say, oh, and if you buy the enterprise version, which is usually 5 or 10 times as much, we don't use your data for training. You're like, hang on a minute, I didn't know you used the data for training in the first place. Well, probably because you didn't read the terms of service, like most people, but it's there. So anyway, having a data-centric approach where the customer can maintain control and access to the data is very important, I think. And customers, as they get more mature, will, in terms of AI and other services, will appreciate this. So you're preparing the ground to be best positioned. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that the best place for customers to put their data is where they can maintain the security of that, access to that, and also still get the value, the upside from the value-added services around that data. So that's the challenge, because yes, you can put it in a vault and no one can access it, but then you have a massive loss in terms of business intelligence and all the value there, so the upside. So that's just not going to happen. So what the customer really wants is the best of both worlds if they can find it, which is security of my data and control, but at the same time, access to these value-added services so I can still deliver on my business aims that I have. So this is the model of CloudSigma. So the idea is that the customer can maintain their sovereignty and control of the data, but at the same time, they can electively use other value-added services sat around, like a constellation of services sat around the data. And that's all delivered locally around the customer's data within the local node of that service provider. So that essentially creates that model. And so we're focused in terms of our product roadmap of continually looking to increase that constellation of services so that becomes a more and more compelling value proposition to our partners and also their end customers. So we have a very successful and close working relationship with Ampere, and we identified very early on that non sort of x86 Intel AMD based computing can offer a very big advantage to service providers, especially when you look at value-added services like platform as a service type services where the customer is already abstracted away from the hardware. So give you an example, you could be using an object storage environment or a data fabric environment. How would you know if that's being run on an Ampere box or an Intel box? The answer is you wouldn't. So, well, you might, because the price would be cheaper if you're running on the Ampere-based box, which is the whole point. So we identified that they're a great solution for service providers to bring down the cost of delivery and increase the efficiency of the service for end customers, for all kinds of things. So we have that integrated into our platform so that, yes, customers can, if they want, port their own computing across to it's an ARM-based compatible system, and that's actually not as complicated as people think. And they can have a really big saving, sometimes 2-3 times reduction in cost on the compute side, and of course reduce their environmental footprint because of the power efficiency. And at the same time, from our service provider partner perspective, they can drive a lot of services at a much lower delivery cost than if they were putting it on traditional hardware. So we've been building out a lot of our new services based on Ampere, and because of that cost of delivery difference that it can be done. And what we also see is that many of our partners become power limited in their data centers, not space limited. So they can't fill their racks anyway. So actually they're paying for space they don't use. So you have a power space saving because it's much lower cost electricity per kind of compute delivered. You have a kind of more efficient use of space because you can actually use more space in the racks. And that all translates, and of course they're very cost competitive as well. So that all translates to a much lower cost of delivery for that service, which of course helps compete on a value basis with sort of the big guys. We've been investing a lot in supporting partners more. I think that's, so we've really expanded the commercial side of the business. And that's both in terms of the number of people, but also the quality and experience level of the people involved on that side of our business, because we found that we can really help service providers with the insights that we see and the experience of those people in delivering the service. So it's not a matter of us just being a technical solution for partners. We're more like a real business partner. We are a business partner in reality for our service provider partners. So we're actually partnering in their cloud business to make it successful. And that aligns with our business model because we actually have a revenue share based business model anyway. So you like the way I turn it. So we fully align with their business anyway in terms of the way we have set up our business model, and that's not an accident. And also what we realize is that it's not only a matter of us adding a new feature or whatever, it's also a matter of us helping them and supporting them in their cloud business day to day. So that additional capacity on the commercial side of the business has allowed us to improve the sort of customer relationship management that we have in a holistic way. So that's both technical, commercial, etc. So it's not only the amount of time we spend with them, which has increased a lot, it's also the kind of insights and the additional support that we can bring to bear. And we're continuing to invest in that. So we're now expanding the technical pre-sale side of the business as well. And we're also building resources in region around the world. So we're building up resources in various nodes around the world so that we can be closer to the end customers as well. So that's also kind of the next stage of our development.